Okay, good morning everyone and welcome. Beautiful day in Perth for a Friday. Happy Friday to everybody. Julianne Spark, Software Solutions Manager for Data3 in WA. Thank you so much for joining our licensing update today. We've got a great session jam-packed with some good information for you. Joining me from Data3 this morning is Damien Richaud and Chris Smith, and then we have Luke Norris joining us from GitHub. Just a little bit of housekeeping that the session will be recorded and we will be sending presentations out after the event. And if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. On the agenda today, Damien will be taking us through a licensing update. We also have Damien taking us through a bit of a checkpoint with where we're at with the true up. And then Mr. Chris Smith, our resident Microsoft Teams specialist, is taking us through the art of possible with Microsoft Teams. And then Luke's going to be sharing some really exciting news in and around GitHub. So yeah, enjoy the session. Please feel free to drop questions into the chat as we go. And I'm going to hand over to Damien to kick us off. Thanks, Damien.
Thanks, Julian. Hi, everyone. Let's, I guess, just jump right into it. So licensing updates, some pretty interesting updates this time around. So we will just go over key licensing update related to key products or platform, I should say, with Microsoft, which most of you now are consuming. We will also be looking at some refreshers, which are quite important, especially entering year 2 of your Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. So at the top here, you can see 2 key updates, the Microsoft Power Platform and the Dynamics 365 update. So this is wave 1 of 2021. And that kind of means that between the 2 platforms, Microsoft has just released an additional 500 plus features, which means that you can do even more that you could do before with those platforms, which is, I think, very exciting. And out of those, I've kind of went through all of them for you and probably picked the top 4 that the community is most excited about. So the first one is around Power Apps, the new modern app designer. So this is probably the most exciting thing in the Power Apps community right now. You will now be able to create canvas custom pages inside model-driven apps. This means if you're using Dynamics 365 or you're creating your own model-driven app, you can now create a custom user experience or custom user interface with no code whatsoever using Canvas style designer. So it doesn't seem like much, but this is absolutely game changer for your staff when they're actually building those apps, and that will make them basically just more efficient. The second one around Power Apps worth sharing is share with colleagues. So now what it means is that when a user creates a Power Apps in Teams, they can now share the apps with the whole organization if they wish. So people don't have to be in teams where you're building your apps in order for them to build it. This sounds simple, but it's a massive bonus for what you can do here. And this is sometimes a big barrier to entry for many people who are trying to build apps and share with others. So now you can share across organization, which makes the user more empowered. The 2 others I would like to share is around Dynamics. And one of them is Dynamics 365 Marketing, which is going to be a bit of a promotion offer for any users that has an E3 and E5, Microsoft Enterprise E3 or E5. You will get 6 months free of Microsoft 365 marketing. So really just giving an opportunity for certain users to start playing with the platform and start enjoying those Teams webinar and follow up and start using the tools and see what it can do for you. So more on that to come, but of course, have a chat with your Data3 account manager or with Microsoft about that. The other one that's pretty big in the Dynamics 365 space is the Teams chat experience now directly embedded in Dynamics 365. So this has been in a really high demand for many Dynamics users, and I've had actually some feedback from certain agencies who were looking for that particular feature, and it is now available. So this chat is in the context of the record in Dynamics. So we are looking here at an opportunity to record, and as a user, I can go in and I can add content in the context of that record and share information with the team members related to that record. Another little bonus, you can see here the Dynamics 365 icon has changed, so it's a new logo. So you can tell us what you think in the chat. And another bonus in there is the Dynamics 365 implementation guide. Now, this is very useful. It's about 700 pages long, but it is very useful for those users that really are trying to get their heads around it and kick off with Dynamics 365. So basically a lot happening in that space. Probably a really good opportunity if you haven't used this platform before to ask your Data3 account manager on how they are licensed, what's the model, and we can provide you all that information as well. So beside that, more around licensing now, more the 101. So multiplexing. So there's been an update on the multiplexing documentation in Microsoft, and that was just around the renaming of the common data service to Dataverse. But really, in that document, there's actually a lot of different scenario to look at multiplexing, and this is very relevant when you're entering year 2 of your agreement. This is about compliance. So if you are wondering if you are licensed correctly, a good way to start is to look at that document. It's not very long. It's probably about 10 to 15 page long, and there's a lot of scenarios with logos and little diagram. So it's a pretty cool document to help you. The other one that I wanted to share is the licensing terms and documentation. Over the last 6 months with my dealing with the agencies, I found that sometimes it's very hard for you to find the right information easily. And look, sometimes it is for us too. So with this link, I'll invite you to favorite that link, because you can basically very easily choose either an software or an online services, and with a couple of clicks, access every single relevant information. The use right, how it can be used, am I licensed correctly, what are the features included, and so on. Another refresher that I want to share with you is your extended security updates. So the link that I've put in here really gives you all of the extended security update availability and end date. As you progress throughout year on year, obviously your old Windows Server, probably 2007, 2012, they're getting older and older. And so it's always good to look at what is potentially coming up out of extended warranty or within the standard extended warranty. To support you, of course, you have your software assurance. With your software assurance, you get 24/7 tickets, which means that you can tap into those tickets to get support. You'll still get all the relevant Microsoft security updates, but the support itself becomes an extension. So you need to have 24/7 tickets available in your software assurance. Of course, the alternative, if you are a unified or premier support agency, that means that you've got direct support from Microsoft for the services, and you can have all sorted. My message here is that some of you out there, agencies, you still have 24/7 tickets. It might be a good time to explore unified support and premier support, and there's a little bit more on that coming up. The other good link here that I want to share, just as a refresher, and again, this is really just feedback from different agencies, is the Volume Licensing Center Software Assurance Guide. A lot of good information in there, how to download your Mac keys, how to download the list of your licenses that you've recently purchased, your online reservation, and also look at the status of your 24/7 tickets or what sort of supports you have. All right, so let's move on to the true-up. So it's been a little while now, and we've moved quite further down the line on this timeline that we shared with you last time around. we're basically towards the end of the true-up process. And I think the first thing I want to say is I would like to thank you, every single one of you who really collaborated in such an easy and smooth way with Data3 to kind of go through the process, giving you the information you needed. And, you know, it is never easy to go through a true-up process. And according to our tracker, we are very well on track. So I want to say a round of applause to all of you that have been part of this process, because it is not an easy one, but it has been a smooth ride so far. So by now, you should have your true-up quotation and your annual payment quotation. Of course, if you have any questions, reach out to your Data3 account executive, but I would highly recommend that you keep those dates in mind. We expect that by the 24th of May, you would have returned your true-up along with your annual payment. Actually, a lot of you have already written the true-up quote, but the annual payment is very important. If you have any issues around those time frame, of course, please feel free to reach out to your Data3 account executive. The other thing I want to share with you is what happens then. So if you submit your annual PO, what happens then? Okay, well, number one, you'll be compliant, so that's good news. So post the 1st of June, which is your anniversary date, within the next 1 to 2 weeks, you will be receiving the Data3 invoice. Okay, so there is no specific time frame. It's just the standard time frame to pay your invoice. There's no deadline after that. It will be during with the normal process. But I want to say that post the 1st of June, between that period, you will be able, within 1 to 2 weeks, that's when you'll get your invoices. So hopefully there is not a lot of question around the true-up, but again, we're always available for you if you have any questions, so please feel free to reach out. So now I want to switch to enterprise enrollment. So there's only one slide about this, but going through the true-up with you all, there has been a lot of question around, what are we going to do next year for enterprise enrollment as far as what is the best way to leverage them? So over the last few months, we've seen quite a bit of demand, especially when we look at Power Apps and Dynamics and other programs for example, using a separate enrollment, also called billing enrollment. And the ability to do that will give basically an IT department the IT capability to basically start using those licenses without impacting your production environment. So here we've included a couple of consideration and recommendation. One of them, which is to use the enterprise billing enrollment for test or development environment, because holistically it will keep everything isolated. So there is certainty that nothing will break. The other one that's been very topical over the last few months is the enterprise enrollment transfer. So why would you do a transfer? Well, there may be a part of your agency that has its own enrollment, and they're basically looking at merging it together with a lead enrollment, for example. Or there may be another enrollment that you want to bring across within your lead enrollment. So all this is possible, but it could be very complex very quickly. So I would say to engage your account executive early in the piece if you start hearing about those discussions around enrollment transfer. It's very, very crucial to have all of the information very much accurate. I would say 100% accurate when we talk about enrollment transfer. Also, sometimes there is a admin that are obviously receiving emails from your enterprise portal. Please don't ignore them. Sometimes they are very valuable piece of information. And, if you don't know what it actually means, because sometimes there's a lot of jargon terms, just send it to your Data3 account executive. We'll basically, analyze them for you, make it in simple terms, and let you know whether it's actually relevant or whether you can file it. So in here, I've also shared, of course, the get started with your enterprise portal documentation. A lot of good information in there, but I'm sure you're very familiar with the basics. But of course, if you need more information, here is a link if you want to basically on your spare time to have a little look at it. Again, I can't stress that enough. If you need to create a new enterprise and billing enrollment, if you're looking at transferring an enrollment, please reach out to your Data3 account executive. We will be more than happy to help you with this. So, quick recap on the software benefits. Of course, we're entering year 2, and I think throughout all the conversation you've had with your account executive at Data3, there's been a big push around utilizing your training vouchers. So just a quick reminder, if you have any training vouchers left, it's not too late to looking at allocating them for a training. So here are the key expiry dates. I think what's critical is that post 1st July, if you haven't used those training vouchers that are sitting in your volume licensing portal, then they'll kind of disappear. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to access training anymore. Most of you have already been contacted by Microsoft to have that conversation and how the future support of the training will basically be deployed. And we can also, if you haven't heard about this, by the way, we can put you in contact with the right people. But most of you, I believe, have been contacted. All it means is that the enterprise agreement will no longer carry those training vouchers. So we may still have some of those conversations, but we won't proactively follow it anymore, because post that date, they basically be already either utilized or they will disappear. Same for the development planning days. Now, I think we've shared that last time. In terms of how to utilize those planning days, is kind of restricted, as before there was a lot of other programs that you could use it, but there's still a few programs that may be of interest. And again, the same dates apply. 24/7 problem resolution. That kind of connect to the earlier slide around the extended support for your Windows servers, for example. So if you are on this particular program, there's no expiry date. You can still use your 24/7 tickets. However, you may want to look at Premier Support or Unified Support, which is a Microsoft new driven model that is basically been quite well adopted within the government agreement. So we can put you in contact with Microsoft. This is directly with them. There's definitely a lot of benefits for you to look at and to potentially leverage. But of course, if you still have 24/7 tickets, you find you can still leverage those for supports. Okay, so that's it for licensing update. Now, if you have any question, please feel free to reach out to us. I will hand it over to Chris Smith, Software Solution at Data3.
Thank you, Damien. Nice to meet most of you. I think I've met a number of you, but I've just come on board as part of the Data3 team. Just a very quick history. I was at Telstra for a very long time, so don't hold that against me. But my time there was spent helping a lot of our customers adopt Microsoft Teams, adopt Teams calling, and the last few years have been very focused on the productivity, the work suite of Microsoft. So we thought today, after the brilliant licensing update, that I could take you through a few of the questions that we commonly get around Teams adoption, and you're all going to be at different aspects of your own adoption, but there's some best practices and some things that we think that might add a bit of value to you. So next slide, please. So these are the three things that I think will add the most value. We did a bit of a survey in-house, and of about 10 different things. We think these are the ones that are potentially going to stop users adopting Teams. As you know, Teams, the technology is a pretty broad beast. It's kind of email, but it's not. It's kind of messaging, but it's not. It's kind of SharePoint, but it's not. But what does it actually do, and how should we use it for our particular organization? So there are some best practices, and there's no wrong way to deploy it, but there is a way that you can get your users at least to try and uptake it. Then I think the second most common user distraction is the way that Teams draws notifications. So with an email, we know that if we send an email, gets to the other side, that's the end of the transaction. You can mark it urgent, or you can mark it low importance, that's done. With Teams, there's a multitude of different ways to gather attention across anyone in the organization or different subsets of groups. So we'll talk about how to get the right notifications to the right people while lowering the noise, the background noise of everyone else that is in that team, which may tend them to kind of switch off Teams or not use Teams altogether. And lastly, which is sort of my hobby horse, is email. Email just celebrated, I think it was his 50th birthday, might be 50 or 40, but she's an old girl. So it's been around for a long time. And how does where do we see email working in the new world of Teams? Is it a friend? Is it a foe? Is it a partner in crime? So we'll explore some of those. And just down the bottom, I've got a link for a champions program, which I'll talk a little bit further about how to foster adoption within your business through things like champion programs. Okay, so best practices for organizations. So we'll take a step back, and again, this is a bit 101 for probably many of you, but it's important to understand the concepts of team. So a team is, as it says there, a collection, a collaboration of a space that you know that you could work either, and when we'll go through the types of structures that you could create, but effectively it's a site collection, very similar to SharePoint, and it's generally around a common task or a common geography, things like that. Next slide. So then a channel, either a private or a public, then for sort of, I guess, they're your folder structures. So you've got your main folder, and then you've got channels, which are for more specific topics that you're collaborating on, and private channels are to allow for, they're there to allow for the need of not having too many teams. So the idea with teams is you really want as fewer teams as possible, and there's many reasons for that, for governance, for lifecycle management, because each team site creates a SharePoint library. So the idea is you have as fewer teams as possible. You use your channels to do the logical separation between maybe business units or functions or geographical groups, and then you'll create private channels which other users can't see that are in that same team, but then allow for that privacy. So, you know, without using private channels, we might have created 3 different other team sites so that we could isolate and limit the number of users that were in that team. So channels and private channels are a great feature to stop team sprawl. So they're kind of the basics. The last one, if you move on to the last one's chat. And we don't really think about chat in the Teams world, but chat's interesting because let's say there's 3 or 4 of us that are working together, and we go, well, maybe we need a channel for that. We need to get a channel, we need to have files and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes a chat will do, because you might have 4 people. You can rename that chat. You can pin that chat to the top of your chat list. You've got a file section. So with chat, it stores the files in OneDrive as opposed to SharePoint. And you may have all the functionality you need to collaborate in that small working group in a chat before you then determine that it's something you want to share with the broader business in SharePoint. So sometimes, yeah, it's a question of, well, really, do we need a channel for that, or is that a short-term project that we're going to, have done within the next few months, and we'll just coerce in chat? So that could be another option. But yes, if you want to progress to the next slide, please. Thanks. So if we look at, this is kind of a big organization, but I think at the very minimum, when you're deploying teams, you will have something that will look like this. You'll generally have one company-wide, or should have one company-wide structure with, as you can see here, with just 3 teams. So this has really just got 3 primary teams, and in those teams, if we say if we look at the channels, so it could be geographically. This could be north, south, and southwest. It could be human resources, sales, in line with the organizational function. And then you can see they've only got about 3 channels per team site. So they've got very few channels, and they've only got 3 team site. And everyone in that organization would have access to this particular structure, because the idea with teams is that they are meant to be open. The concept is that you're working in the open. Right, so what you're doing and what you're conversing, instead of having that bundled up in an email with a couple of people on a CC, you're now working in the open, so that if I'm working on a project that's similar to yours, I could maybe go into your channel and have a bit of a look at what you're doing and how your engagement's going. So the idea of teams to work in the open is to have as much visibility to what is happening and sort of blogging it or diarying it in real time. And that's where private, if it was something private, something a bit confidential, that's where you would then have a private channel that all eyeballs couldn't look at. You'll see all have a file section, so you've got a file section per channel. But that's probably a starting point. In an org-wide one, you might have as I say, HR, you might have procurement, events, you know, there'll be common things that everyone will have access to. Now, an organizational approach, as we just discussed, is very much in line with your business units. You might be siloed, as you know, most businesses are. So you might instinctively want to come down in certain work groups and have channels in that sense. The other approach is a project approach, a cross-functional approach, and this is by far the most desired approach. So, for instance, Northwest Sales District, so that's a district. Now, in that district, they may have a collection of resources from admin to pre-sales to technical support, whatever it might be, whatever I guess the people resources are that help that district function. So rather than have one for the sales guys, one for the technical guys, as we would in this organizational structure, one for the marketing team. The idea is that you would have them all under one team site, and then they'd have different channels within that one. So for instance, in WA, we should have one team site, and then our service team would have a channel, our software team would have a channel, etc. and so forth. Because if I wanted to see what was happening with the services team and what new products they have coming up and things like that, I can actually go in and have a look at what work is being done and what topics are being discussed. And if I'm not interested in that, I can hide those channels, which I'll show you later on, or I can turn the alerts to them off. So this is what we call a cross-functional team, where we've got to get out of that mindset that if I'm in that org, then those people are in that team, and the rest of the business, I don't want them seeing what we're doing in here because I'm worried that they're going to look at us, you know, look at what we're doing. But that's yeah, what we'll call a cross-functional. And the last one takes that sort of to the next step. So this is a full this is an example of a cross-functional sales team. So we might have a national marketing resource that's updating information here. The products team are potentially contributing there, and Teams also has the ability to post in multiple channels. So let's say I've got my own. I'm the marketing lead nationally. I might have a marketing team where my colleagues and I, you know, we collaborate on marketing initiatives and whatnot. But when I want to go out and get that information to the national team, I can make one post and it will land in multiple channels. So let's say each region had its own marketing channel. I can make one post and it will appear in all of those different team sites, and then you can now foster conversations, because the point is in sharing information as teams is that it fosters conversations. People generally don't like writing back to email, but they will engage in a thread that's in Teams. So cross-functional teams again, some of this takes a little bit of thought around, what are the common groupings that you would have. I would say, and a good lesson is less is more. So if we were to start here, might not have marketing, might not have product updates. These are great. Help needed. That's great. I often use Ask an Expert or news and events. So what you'll find is if you've gone too specific with your team names, they won't. People get confused about where to post, and they won't post. And the other downside about having too many channels is that it's like something you go to a nightclub or a restaurant and there's no one in there, and you're like, gee, this place is dead. I'm not going to hang around here. The more you condense it, and if you are using the right titles, then it looks more vibrant and it will foster the growth of using Teams, because people can see other people using Teams. So when you start out, you just may have one site, a general and an other, or news and events, and then see what is getting traction, see what topics are coming up, and if there's enough chatter for that particular topic, then create a channel for it, and then so on and so forth as it grows. And I've made those mistakes myself, made the channels too specific, and then they just die off. Another little thing about that, no problem with the channel dying off. Probably every 6 months, review what is being added, review if you think you've got your groups right with what the content should be, and then just delete any that aren't. And also good to do that in a collaborative way. So perhaps when setting up a new site, get everyone together over lunch and say, well, what information do we think we need to share? I think that was the last one I had on the actual structure. Okay, so just very quickly, as we said, standard is always open. A private channel, when you create it, it doesn't appear in the list of other channels to those that don't have access, so it is strictly private. It creates a separate SharePoint site in the back end, so it is securely and logically separated from everywhere else. And yeah, that's it about private channels. Potentially, I would have controls in place to prevent people creating private channels. There are restrictions or profiles you can enact. And that being said, there's also profiles you can enact on who can create team sites. So let's say you're rolling this out. You could run a little training session similar to what we did at our last company. So you'd have to do a little 2-hour training session. It would teach you best practices around naming conventions, around making sure that you got 2 owners, because if one owner accidentally locks themselves out, you need someone else to add them back in. So there's a little training sort of certification. And then after that, those people can then create teams, but no one else can. So you can add a few governance sort of pieces early on in the piece as well. Okay, so that's it for the slides. Let's have a squiz at a couple of those, what I think are the most restrictive when it comes to getting people to sort of embrace. Now, I've got to keep up with me. I've recorded this earlier. So this is for someone that's got that common 37 icons. I've seen that before, which would drive me crazy. Now, I've just gone into my little icon, my head little notification up the top. I've jumped into settings. I've gone into notifications. The very first one I would turn off is this daily digest. That is going to send you an email up to every 10 minutes if someone posts and you don't read it. Very annoying, and that will very quickly stop someone using Teams if you have that. So I would turn that off. The rest of it is you can go into mentions. You can go into, if you can just go to the very last, it cut off very quickly. Just pause it maybe at the very, yeah, around about there. I just want to see those sections that I had. Is that going to like that? Oh, no. If it doesn't, there were effectively in there, there's about 3 sections around, do you want banners to pop up? Yeah, it's coming up here. Sorry, I was talking over it. So we go to notifications. Okay, so missed activity off, make sure that's off. And then also the play sound for incoming calls and notifications, that kills me. I always turn that off. Notification style, Teams built in. So you can either have Windows or Teams pop up. And then there's a bunch here around meetings and chats and things like that. Do you want banners and text? So yeah, if you're getting too many of these little 27 numbers, then potentially you've got those notifications on. If we can go to the next one. Now this is on the phone. There's also some good features. Yeah, just hit play on that. There's also a bunch of, go back one. Perfect. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so if we go into my little icon head and we go down to settings, now here during quiet times, you can either allow it to just pause on this one because I find this quite funny. So during quiet time, so there was before a lot of people didn't use the Teams app because if it was your primary phone number, there was no way to stop it ringing outside of office hours. You had to literally log out of the Teams app. There was no after hours, don't call me. So they've now added this after hours option so that if you use your and this is more if you've got if you've also got telephony in Teams as well. So a lot of people have their 08 number in Teams as well. So you can control whether it will ring you outside. Yeah, sorry, hit play. So in quiet times, probably good for it to, I've got allowed because I answer my customers any time of the day. This one, when active on desktop, you definitely want to turn that off. Otherwise, you've got your phone dinging, you're on your desktop, your desktop's dinging. That would drive you insane. So just turn that off. And when in a meeting, this is an obvious one. When in a meeting, do not try and ring me because I'm in a meeting. You know I'm in a meeting, so I don't know why that's an option. There is also another option at the back end for your admin called busy on busy. So if you ever find that you're in a meeting or even on a one-to-one phone and Teams is trying to call you, then there is a setting in the background called busy on busy, and that can be set at an administrative level, which means that when you're busy, provide a busy tone. Don't try and do call waiting or call assist. Yeah, if you want to move to the next one. So there are a few in the phone and there are a few on the desktop. Now to avoid that 27 little icons, we'll go through tags. You might have seen tags before, relatively new. And just while we're pulling up a tag, so the general channel, every site, every team site has a general channel. If you post in the general channel, that is going to alert everyone that is a member of that channel. They will get a little icon notification. So we generally use the general channel for, I guess, a broadcast message or something that everyone, you need to have everyone across. So it's used sparingly. Thank you. Yeah, press play on this one. So this is how we use tags to draw the right people's attention without creating too much noise with everyone else. So I click the ellipsis on any channel. You'll see there the option manage tags. So in here I've created 2 tags, one for our AE team, and you can see there's all our amazing AEs. And I can edit that team. I might call it tech support. I might call it priority 1. We used to have one called faults or faults priority 1, whichever team you need to make sure they see a message regardless of where it's posted in Teams. So here's an example. So I'll go down and I'll start a message and I'll just put the @ and AE Teams, and that's now going to alert with the little icon up the top. They're going to get that message to say, hey, similar to @symboling someone, but I've done it as a dynamic group that I can manage. I think that's the end for that one. We might be on to the hiding channels. Okay, so yeah, hit play on this. So you can see I've got 3 hidden channels already down the bottom. So there's clearly stuff that doesn't necessarily concern me. But if you click the ellipsis, you can either set the channel notifications. So you might turn off all messages. So there's a particularly noisy channel, right, that everyone keeps posting in. You can turn off the notifications for it. So all new posts are off. I don't want to know anything about it. And then if I'm really not interested in it as well, I'm going to hide it as well. So then it'll appear down the hidden section there. You can also hide or you can hide team sites. They'll appear down the very bottom as well. Under there's a little section there called hidden teams. The other thing that I can do is from a channel owner perspective, I can dictate who sees it. So let's say, yeah, I want to make sure that then, certain channels are important. They're not hidden, but then I think these other ones should be hidden. You can actually manage that from a site owner perspective. Okay, I think next. Mentions. This is probably an easy one. If anyone's used, Facebook, WhatsApp, you're kind of used to it. Teams does it a little bit differently. So just down the bottom here, I've got @general. Now I'm in the using MS Teams channel, but if I write @general, it's effectively doing the same thing as if I was posting in general. It's saying everyone that's a member, and I'm just looking at the member of this team now, everyone that's a member will get that message because I've typed @general. So typing in the general channel or using @general in a different post in a different channel has the same effect. The second bit I've just written there is AE team. So that instead of everyone in the group, that's just going to message those people. They're going to get alerts. And then I believe the very last one I'm going to do is the channel itself. So when you message the channel itself, that will depend on the notifications of the users of that group. So if you got notifications turned off because people keep mentioning that channel and it's just too much, they're not going to get that. But the idea is that an @general is everyone that's on it. you would then set your notifications of what you're interested in. And then when something of relative importance came up, then the user would do the @channel name to make sure that they got an alert to go check that out. And you may have seen if there's no mentioning, all you're going to see is a highlighted, or it's going to be slightly bold, just to know that there's a conversation going on there. Okay. Next, we've got 2 more to go and we'll race through them. So Teams and email, which is best? So let me just do, getting email into Teams is pretty easy. So we're going to go get email address. So each channel will have an email address. That's the email address there. Paste that in there. There's also a button now in Outlook where you can just hit share to email, and that will select which channel you would like to move it into. Now, I've already got a post here. So there, I've just clicked on the little ellipses and now share to Outlook. So I've taken a post that I've already made, and I'm going to do the opposite. So either bringing it in or taking it out. 2 ways to interact with Outlook to get it out. Now, what I would suggest if you're really going down this path, this Teams path, is to always make your posts in Teams, wherever they may be. You then send it out as an email, because you know there's going to be some people that aren't in Teams and they're probably not up with it. So then just send that as a email out of Teams so they can come back and contribute in Teams. So that way you're not sharing attachments, you're doing everything right in Teams, but you're still capturing the audience that is not, next slide, that is not already maybe on the same journey. So post in Teams, send to Outlook. Very quickly, this last one is just urgence and status. So hit play. You may not be, so let's say I've tried to, this is a hidden bar up the top here that most people don't know about, the search bar. So if you do /, there's one quick little thing that's really cool, which is called a test call. If you click that, that will make sure your AV is ready to go, does a little AV test to make sure your headset's working and things like that. There's also org structures. If you're in a bigger org structure, you can do /, and it will show you that. But what I want to show here is messaging my friend Michael. So I'm going to go up at, what's his name? Now he's an external user. This is Mike Gadsden from Microsoft. We are federated, and he's a Teams to Teams communicator. If you have any trouble with federation, please let me know. Now I can write just a quick message there, and I don't have to go into chat, but for this occasion, I want to write an urgent message. So I've clicked on his name to get into our last chat, and then down the bottom, I was giving an example over here. So if that person was offline, I can do notify when they come online, etc., etc. I could pin them. You can pop out chats, as you may have already seen. Just double click. Okay, let's get to the. Okay, so Michael. So you made it really clean. Okay, Michael, let's go. It's pretty common for Michael and I to be grabbing a beer. So over here on the ellipsis, which you may easily miss, there's mark as important. So if a message is marked as important, he's going to get a red icon up the top here next to his message. So it's going to look quite a lot different, and in the future that will actually ping his mobile phone until every 2 minutes until he actually answers that message. So there is the option of inserting urgency into this. And then the very last thing I wanted to show was status. So up the top here, you can change set to away, set to busy. You can set all your statuses there. But I think if we just jump to the very last slide. And thank you for your patience with everyone. So look, these are the top tips that I'd leave you with, is that less is more for channels. So start small, start with broad topics. topics that people won't get confused about where do I put something that's that specific, and that will condense information and condense the communication so that it actually does start to thrive, and then you can grow from there. As mentioned, ask an expert, news and events, general channels are really good. Tagging notifications, helping sit down with users and saying, why do you have 27 icons? How can we better manage getting the right information to you? A champion program, so someone that can help coach others, weekly skill pills, sessions like that really help, and understanding the personas of who you're dealing with. So there could be just one use case, which is chat. There could be a use case, which is planner or meetings, and start with that one use case and forget the rest, and then grow as the skills grow, sort of grow it that way. And just a little bit of a name and shame from ours. This is one that is in Data3, and it's probably a good example of modern transformation. Is that modern workplace or is Teams room? You know, that really should be probably about 3 or 4 separate channels that if we had multiple topics, then we could break out. But a lot of those topics probably relate to each other. So we'd like to see what other discussions are happening in those topics. But I've far exceeded my time. So thank you very much. I hope you found that useful. Any other guidance or anything you'd like on that, please reach out. And it's my pleasure to hand over to Luke. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks, mate. That was really very interesting. I'm a relatively new Teams user since Microsoft acquired GitHub. We've historically operated with things like Slack and Zoom and all sorts of other things over the years. So I get infuriated with things popping and beeping and so on, and I don't know how to turn it off. So I took some notes there, and I'll apologise now if things start beeping and popping as I'm speaking, as other people from Microsoft message me. So let's just jump straight into GitHub. Look, I appreciate there's probably a mixed audience today, and so I'll try not to get too far into the weeds about GitHub because some of you may not actually know anything about GitHub at this time. But what I want to talk about is really the acquisition of GitHub by Microsoft and what that means in terms of our roadmap and our product lines, and then what that means for you as Microsoft customers, and then just to share a couple of programs that you may want to explore via our partners at Data3. Okay, next slide, please. So firstly, I'd like to just touch on the acquisition of GitHub. And I thought I'd start with a quote from Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, where I think Satya really very well articulates here the fact that software development and the creation of digital IP is becoming more and more relevant and core to the delivery of products and services for organizations right across the world, whether that's in the public sector or the private sector. I think obviously most of the people on the call today, I'm guessing, are from WA government, and I would imagine when you're providing services to Western Australian citizens or to other customers, whether that's your stakeholders internally, that those products and services that you're delivering have a digital component that is core to the performance of that operating. And so it stands to reason that the people, the resources that actually create, develop, enhance, and maintain your digital assets, your digital IP, are becoming more and more important and influential within your organization. And as Satya states here, GitHub is the place that software developers go. They congregate on github.com. They collaborate there, they share, they learn, and they create some of the most amazing products that you're probably consuming now, even though you don't know you're consuming it. Modern day applications are actually made up, in fact, almost 100% of modern day applications are made up of 80% open source public libraries, things that are sitting there in the cloud on github.com today. And so Microsoft recognized that with 65 million developers operating on github.com, that they needed a way to bring value to their enterprise customers by giving them direct access to that powerful community. And so they made the acquisition back in 2018, and that obviously has some knock-on effects for where we're going as a combined family. Next slide, please. So there are two products, and I think there's been a lot of questions in the market as to what it means for our future together with Microsoft. For those on the call, some of you will be aware there is GitHub Enterprise and there is Azure DevOps. If I talk about Azure DevOps, it's been providing amazing value, I think, to thousands of enterprises around the world for over 15 years through various iterations, whether that's through Team Foundation Server and gradually evolving into what it is today. And then on the other side, you have GitHub, and GitHub has also had an enterprise platform for many years, but we're not known as that standard enterprise product. And we don't bring perhaps the same trusted enterprise pedigree that Microsoft has over the years. We're known as the home of open source. We're known as that place that has, as I mentioned, 65 million users now. Over 200 million code repositories sit on github.com. And within that, you have an incredible feedback loop, that community, and that's what GitHub is. It's a community. They feedback almost instantly to us what they like, what they don't like, what they want. And that enables us to enhance and develop our products and provide incredible value back to our customers. And so what if we were to bring that trusted enterprise pedigree of Microsoft and the incredible power of this massive GitHub community and bring them together and actually create a world-class product that actually services the needs of both communities better than it does today. Next slide, please. So that's what we're doing. And we've made a strategic decision at the highest levels that we will be bringing these product lines together, and we are bringing them together under GitHub Enterprise. Now, before I go any further, I don't want to cause panic. I recognize that there is, obviously thousands of organizations with a great investment in Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is not going anywhere soon. And we don't like to use the term deprecation here. This is purely evolution of our product sets. We've started by merging our leadership. And so the CEO of GitHub, a gentleman by the name of Nat Friedman, is now also the head of Azure DevOps. And under Nat's leadership, we've merged our engineering teams, and that has already brought a wealth of value to us internally at Microsoft, because we've now been able to standardize tooling for over 100,000 engineers, but also the lessons learned from the power that the Microsoft engineering team brought to us in terms of their knowledge of enterprise customer requirements has been second to none, and it's really helped as we move forward and start to bring our product lines together. Next slide, please. So what will be happening as we move forward is that all of the features of Azure DevOps that has made Azure DevOps such a popular enterprise platform for many years will be subsumed by GitHub Enterprise. We will be rolling all of the features across, and I appreciate there are some crossovers in the features that we currently have today, but we're basically taking the strengths of both platforms and bringing them together. And at the same time, there will be features within GitHub Enterprise that do not exist, of course, in Azure DevOps. And that's really where we want to start to provide our customers with incentive and features that they actually want to use within their software development lifecycle, and tempt you, should we say, and to give you that incentive to come across and start to have a look at GitHub Enterprise and explore what it might bring for your software program. Next slide, please. Now, I wanted to touch on just a couple of things, and I appreciate we're a little bit short of time, so I won't spend too much time on this. As I mentioned, there's a bit of crossover in our product lines as they come together, but in saying that we've merged our engineering teams, the product owners for each feature are now the same person, the same team, effectively. And one that I wanted to touch on, which I think has really been, I suppose really highlights the success that we've already enjoyed by bringing our teams together, is right there in the middle, which is CI/CD. That's continuous integration, continuous deployment. We have, on one hand, we have GitHub Actions, which our community has been crying out for a long time. Historically, GitHub didn't have a good answer to CI/CD, but Microsoft did. And we wanted to build something beyond pure CI/CD. We wanted to build full workflow automation. And so we've been delighted to bring that knowledge, that lesson learned of delivering CI/CD to enterprise customers for years and bring that to the GitHub team, but go way above and beyond, and to leverage the strength of that community that I mentioned that sits on github.com. You see, what we do at GitHub is we make these products free for all open source public projects, which creates adoption and it creates contributions. And on the GitHub marketplace now, GitHub Actions, these workflows that you can absorb and bring into your software development lifecycle, have huge amounts of contributions on github.com. In fact, there's over 8,500 workflows already contributed, and they're not just contributed by individuals, they're being contributed by software vendors that want you to work with their product today, and they recognize that if they don't integrate with GitHub, they're going to lose a big part of their market share. So it's been a wonderful success story for us. We've seen GitHub Actions, which has been now live in the market for 12 months, and it has over 56% of the global CI/CD market share, which is phenomenal growth. I'll move on to the next slide, if I can, please. I wanted to touch on one thing. I mentioned there are some features that come with GitHub that you can't get in Azure DevOps, and our security features have absolutely been the differentiator for us over the past 6 to 7 months. On one hand, we feel a responsibility at GitHub. As I mentioned, we have over 200 million code repositories sitting on our website today, and all of you will be consuming some of the libraries that come out of those repositories. And so we feel an inherent responsibility to work with our maintainers to secure the open source software supply chain so that you can continue to do that. And we provide some phenomenal tools to help you to do that. We have Dependabot, for example, which provides software composition analysis. That's a bot that was originally on the GitHub marketplace that we acquired, and we made it free for the entire community. And we packaged that as part of our GitHub Enterprise product. That's a tool, that's a bot that basically keeps an eye on all of the open source you are consuming and alerts you if there is ever a vulnerability announced on GitHub as it relates to what you have in your project. Then we provide secret scanning as well. And that's certainly been a hugely valuable product for anybody that's accidentally, or a developer that's accidentally hard-coded a password or a secret in their code base, and we can revoke things with an automated capacity as well. And finally, our code scanning capability through an acquisition of a company by the name of Semel has been a game changer for me working with the defense and intel communities. It's something that they've consumed a lot over the years in its original format, but it is fundamentally one of the most powerful code scanning tools available on the planet today. And because we now make it free for all open source public projects, we have contributions from that incredibly strong community on github.com. And those contributions enable that product to improve continuously month on month and deliver better value to our enterprise customers. We'll jump to the next slide, please. I think we're down to the last 60 seconds. So this, I suppose, is where I just wanted to talk about a couple of the programs that we have put together as a part of this strategic direction. And these are programs you can access via the wonderful team at Data3. First and foremost, if you are an Azure DevOps customer today and you are seeking to explore GitHub and you want to come and buy a GitHub Enterprise license, we will discount the cost of Azure DevOps out of that GitHub license. So you are not paying for both products, but you will get both products side by side. We acknowledge that there will be a need for some customers to operate in a hybrid model at the moment, to continue to use certain features of Azure DevOps today and to start using GitHub for things like repos, possibly code scanning and other such things. And then the other option, which has been incredibly popular over recent months, is for customers that are already committed, that have signed up with Visual Studio Enterprise or Visual Studio Pro subscriptions, known previously as MSDN. I think a lot of people still refer to them as MSDN subscriptions. We will add a GitHub license to those subscriptions for 1 cent per user per month. That sounds absolutely mad, I know. If we could give it away for free, we would. We have some legal restrictions as to why we can't literally just turn it on for you. There has to be a buying motion. We've made it as cheap as we possibly could. So certainly if you look through your EA enrollments and you see those Visual Studio subscriptions and you'd like to start exploring GitHub, we'd be more than happy to make those licenses available. And with that, we're at 1:01, I think. Well, that's my time. What's that? 11:01 or something for you guys. I appreciate your time, and thanks very much for the invite today, guys. It's greatly appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luke. Yeah, great information there, and great information shared on Microsoft Teams with Chris, and a good licensing update via Damien. So we are right on time, just after. I don't believe we've had any questions posted in the chat, but thank you also very much for your attendance today. We will be sharing out, actually, when this pack goes out, there's an opportunity to provide us with some feedback via the link or the QR code. So if I could ask you to do that and share some information on how you thought the session was today, and also what you'd like to see from us in up and coming events, that would be really good. We'd appreciate that. But wishing you all a wonderful Friday, and enjoy your weekend, and thank you so much.